very much for the very warm welcomes and the kind words of the ambassador and of the mayor. And thank you, Bratislava, for coming, all of you, to, I think all of you are here. So this is not going to be a cycle show as was indicated here, because I think, look at it the other way around. I always was very interested in the life in the city, how people use the city. And so it was always people in the city which was my interest. And at some point I realized, or we decided in Copenhagen, that bicyclists were a sort of people. And they could be included in life. So I'm going to talk about life in the city, and I will say that bicycles are part of life. Some part of life. But the main thing is that we are sweet to people in our cities, and I shall try to address this subject. A couple of years ago, I, of course, have been working as an architect for many years. I graduated in 1960, that's 51 years ago. But I've now written many books about life in the city and people in the city. And then a couple of years ago, a Danish foundation came to me and said, we would like you to sit down and write down everything you know while you can still remember it. And then I said, I have no time, I haven't got the time. They said, how many assistants will you need to have the time? Would you need 1, 2, 3, 4? And at some point I said, yes, now I have time. So we made this book. It's come out in all the major languages: Danish, Chinese, and English. Right? And I even saw there were some copies out there. So it's even here in Bratislava, which I'm very happy about. I will tell you a little bit about one of the things which I, in this book, are trying to explain, and that is about what I call the very important change of paradigm which happened around 1960. It has nothing to do with my graduation, I must say, but it was something which has to do with the time when the city started to expand very rapidly. And at this point, there was the ideas of the functionalists which was dominating. And that was the idea of, say, like this sketch here from Corbusier, where he said that cities are bad. What is good is freestanding building out in the grass. Later on, he called this high-rise the vertical garden city, because everybody could see some grass. Later on, they could all see the parking lot. And that was the time when we started to build these freestanding buildings. And that became very dominant in the whole reconstruction of Europe after the war. And it is still very dominant in many parts of the world, especially now in China. And to me, that was the all-time low point of city planning. That was 1960. And we have worked with these principles ever since. What I do think what happened was that suddenly the planning, until this point, when we were building cities, we expanded the cities based on our experience. We added one house to the previous house. We were building alongside streets, and there was a lot of experience through many centuries of human habitation of what would be a good city for people. So we used all this experience and tradition, and it was more or less all right until 1960. Then it started to be big new constructions. The planners could not do it one by one. They had to go up sort of in an aeroplane. They were hanging over their models, and they were shifting around with the objects. I know it because when I was in School of Architecture in the 50s, this was what we were taught, that city planning, that's something about moving objects around from a big height. Bingo, here it is. But what is important is that city planning and planning is not about making compositions from an aeroplane. That is a big story, but there is an intermediate story, and that is the site plan. We could also call it helicopter perspective, rooftop perspective. And what happened in 1960 was that all emphasis was placed on the big and the intermediate scale, but the people scale, the scale of the people walking with 5 kilometers an hour, the scale at eye level, that was completely forgotten. That was thrown out. And then we had areas which looked like this and which were awful for people to be in. And the point is that nobody was asked to look after the people scale. Everybody is looking after other scales. Still is in many cases. And I've checked, does the planner learn about people? No. Does the architect learn about people? No. Does the landscape architect learn about people? No, not very much. Does the traffic planners learn about people? No. So nobody really know about people, and nobody has been asked to look after the people dimension. Everybody is looking after something else. Here we have the usual suspects. They are here gathered around a model, and they are shifting around the buildings. And here is a model of a Dutch city, a new town in Holland. It could be anywhere. But you could almost hear them say, what about 2 oval buildings? Yeah, we put 2 oval buildings. What about some tubes, orange tubes, or turned 45 degrees? Yeah. And you can hear them, and some slabs against the railway station. Yeah, they should be green. Yeah. And gradually the city takes shape, and then you can start to speculate, what would it be to be a Dutchman down between these buildings? That's not part of that story. And that's not because it's not because, sorry, Mrs. Ambassador, it's in Holland, but it's everywhere. And I've seen this being done, and it's being done now in great scale in China for millions of people. Still this, where everything is looked after except the people. So I had to change this. Around 1960, in the western part of Europe at least, there was another part of this change of paradigm.